Okay, we're going to look at using factor trees to find the square root of a number. So if we just have a look at our first question here, we've got to find the square root of 196. So the first thing to do is to do a factor tree for 196. Okay, so let's break this up into some factors. Now, most of you probably won't know what goes into 196 straight away, so we'll start off with doing it the easy way. This is an even number because the last digit is a 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8. So we know it's divisible by 2 because it's an even number. So I'm just going to divide 2 into 196. Now 2 into 1, 0 times. So we link up the 1 and the 9. 2 into 19 goes 9 times because 9 twos are 18. At least there's one remainder. And then 2 into 16 goes 8. Okay, so our factors are 2 and 98. Okay, now we can't break down 2 any further, but we can break down 98. 98 is an even number again, so I'm just going to go 2 into 98. So 2's into 9 goes 4 times because 4 twos are 8. So that means I've got one remainder. 2's are 18 goes 9. So that means 98 can be broken up into 2 and 49. Okay, now 2 keeps coming down here. Now, 49 I can break down into 7 and 7. 7 sevens are 49. And the 2 comes down and the 2 comes down. Okay, now all of these are prime factors. So I can say that 196 is equal to 2 times 2 times 7 times 7. Now, we can put this in index form, can't we? 2 times 2 is 2 squared. And 7 times 7 is 7 squared. So we've written 196 as 2 squared times 7 squared. So let's write that over here. I'll put that over here now. So I'll just come over here with my working out. So I've got 196 is equal to 2 squared times 7 squared. Okay, now we want to find out the square root of 196, don't we? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to square root both sides of this equation. So what that means is if 196 is equal to 2 squared times 7 squared, that means the square root of 196 must equal to the square root of this. Okay, now almost there. Square roots cancel out powers of 2 because they're opposites, the inverse operations. So these powers of 2 will be cancelled out by the square root. So we can just write then this is 2 times 7, which is then 14. So the square root of 196 is 14. You can check that on your calculator. Okay, so just to recap that, to find the square root of 196, you take the number inside the square root, right? Use a factor tree to write it as a product of its prime factors in index form. So you must have them in index form. And then you take the square root of the index form, 2 squared times 7 squared, right? And that square root there will cancel out the powers of 2, so you just got 2 times 7 there. Okay, so let's try another question, question 2. So we've got to find the square root of 625. So we'll start off with 625, we'll put that up here. And we've got to split this into some factors. Okay, now what goes into 625? Well, because the number ends in 5, we know it's divisible by 5. So let's put 5s into 625. So 5s into 6 goes once with one remainder. 5s into 12 goes twice with 2 remainder. And 5s into 25 goes 5. So my factors are 5 and 125. Now, what goes into 125? 5 goes in there because the number ends in 5. So you've got that there. So 5's into 1 goes 0 times. So we link up the 1 and the 2 to become 12. 5 into 12 goes twice with 2 remainder. And then 5 into 25 goes 5. So I can split this up into 5 and also 25. Okay, now 25, that can be split up into 5 and 5. And bring the other 5s down. So we've got 625 is equal to 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. Okay, now we could write that in index form as 5 to the 4. Okay, however, we're not going to do that in this case. We're actually just going to pair them up into the square factors because we want to use the fact that the square root cancels out powers of 2. Square roots don't cancel out powers of 4. So even though that's correct in terms of writing an index form, we want powers of 2 here. So what I'm going to write down then, if I just come up here with my working out, I'm going to write down that 625 is equal to 5 squared. So that's 5 times 5 is 5 squared. And the other one is 5 times 5 is 5 squared. So I'm going to write it as 5 squared times 5 squared. So when you're doing these questions with the square roots, you've got to make sure that the index form has powers of 2 only. Okay. Now, final step. 620 square root of 625 must equal to the square root of this because they're the same number. Okay. Now, the square root will cancel out the powers of 2. Okay. So that just leaves us with 5 times 5 then. Okay, so the powers of 2 are cancelled by the square root because square rooting and squaring is opposite. So they cancel each other out. So that gives you your answer of 25. Okay, so our last question. Let's have a look at a cube root. Cube root of 216. So for this one, we're going to start off the same way with the factor tree. Now, 216. Let's break this down. Now, it's an even number, so I know that it's divisible by 2. 2's into 2 goes once. 2's into 1 goes 0 times, but now we link up the 1 and the 6 to 16. 2's into 16 goes 8. So the factors of 216 are 2 and 108. Now, 108 is an even number, so it's divisible by 2 again. So if I divide that by 2, I'm going to get 2 times 54, because half of 108 is 54. Bring down the 2 again. Now, 54 is 6 nines, isn't it? 6 times 9. Bring the 2 again. Bring down the 2 again. And 9 is 3 times 3. And 6 is also is 3 times 2. Bring down the 2. Bring down the 2. Okay. So we've got 216 now. So 216, so not equals 216, should be 216 is equal to 2 times 2 times 3 times 2 times 3 times 3. So 2 times 2 times 3 times 2 times 3 times 3. Now with multiplication, the order doesn't matter. So we're just going to change the order so we've got all the 2's together. So I'm going to just take this 2 here and put it next to the other 2. And that will leave the 3 3's together and the 3 2's together. Now, putting this in an index form, I'm going to get 2 to the power 3 times 3 to the power 3. All right, so 216 is equal to 2 cubed times 3 cubed. Now the next step is to say, look, the question actually asked us, if you look back at the top, what is the cube root of 216? So the next step of my working is I'm going to cube root both sides of that equation. So cube root, it's a little square root symbol with a little 3, and then square root symbol with a little 3 there. So I've cube root both sides. Now, cube root is the opposite of cubing. So those operations undo each other. They're the opposite operations. So the cube root will undo the power of 3. So I can just write this now as 2 times 3, which equals 6. Okay, so the cube root of 216 is equal to 6.